that wouldn't hurt, but yes, let's see what Eric has to say. And then if you're not on board with what he's proposing,
Don is on vacation this week. Don is.
Oh, he is. Okay.
And Eric, but he said he would be available by phone.
Okay.
Let's go. Okay. 5 hours and 10 minutes if the state opens. Long round.
Ooh. Okay. It was 4 hours today and it was a long round.
Right here?
I thought.
He is. He just stepped out for a second. I think we will, why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order. The mayor will be as we usually do, we'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, Lisa, you got the roll call.
We have Chair Robert Dew. Here. We have Vice Chair Kevin Fuller's absent. Treasurer Don Jensen.
Here.
Commissioner Tom Sifsky. Here. Commissioner Archie Vickerman. Here. Mayor and Council Representative Terry Furlong is here but stepped out momentarily. We have Council Representative Tim Cole.
Here.
And Executive Director Brian Frandl. Here. And the Business Association Representative Brett Geary is absent.
Any changes to the agenda, public agenda? If not, we'll go ahead and adopt the agenda. Does that require a motion? No proposed changes. Okay. We do have a fairly, I will say, we have just a fairly short agenda today. We have a couple of key topics in advance of our joint meeting on Thursday with the Planning Commission. So, consent agenda. The only thing on our consent agenda is approval of meeting minutes, which are attached on June 2nd. Comments or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. So made.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So that's for the June 22nd meeting are approved. We do have a couple of follow-up items last meeting that I'll get on my portion. So I only put on 2 agenda items here for discussion today, and both items center around what the agenda items for the next meeting with the Planning Commission. And so my thought process was that we can watch, and I'm not sure who plans to attend that joint meeting on Thursday. I plan to be there.
I will try to Zoom it.
Okay.
I think I'll probably try to Zoom it. I'd like to be here. We'll see. It may not work, but I'll Zoom it.
Okay. Kevin, are you Kevin's not there? And so we'll at least have some representation there, and I've talked with on these agenda topics. So I thought we would talk about both of these in advance because really I can get a consensus view from the EDA on these 2 topics in our discussion with planning. So we can at least be on the same page going in. So the first one is the redevelopment master plan update/review. So just a quick background on that, if you haven't heard it before. So one of when we did the annual report last week, and then it also came up, I know at least 1 or 2 of our meetings when there was a use that was approved downtown, and we kind of, I'll say maybe I did, raised an eyebrow about it, and kind of said, how did that get through, and how does that fit in the redevelopment master plan? And then ultimately in our annual report to the council, we suggested that the redevelopment master plan as published and and as shown on the city website, it is a guiding document along with the comprehensive plan and zoning code, whatever. Yeah, it became pretty clear that nobody has really been looking at it, at least not as it was intended to be utilized. So if you're familiar with the comp plan is fairly broad and very long term in its view of what the city's going to be and is trying to do. The redevelopment master plan had a fair amount more specificity about specific areas and what are we trying to achieve in those areas now. That redevelopment. So my point was if this is one of our guiding documents, we either should agree that we're going to use it or scrap it. And if we're going to use it, it was originally finalized in December of 2012. It requires some updating because a lot has happened since it was originally published or been adopted by both the EDA and the council, and the planning commission. So that's really, I guess, that is the topic of discussion with planning. Do we want to update it? Do we still see it as a viable document? And if the answer is yes, what is the plan to do so? Because it should be a collective group from planning and EDA, which are the original owners of the document, and then it was adopted by council. So I guess let me ask a question before I open it for comments. Has everybody at least glanced at that in the last 4 or 5 months? No. Okay.
It was adopted before I was on the EDA.
Yep.
I guess I've never really seen it.
It is.
So I should probably look it up and.
It is on the website. If you go on the website under both planning commission and the EDA portion, it's on there. Can we put anything on the screen?
Carrie, can you pull up the redevelopment master plan and post that?
I can't do it unless you make me a panelist. I don't have controls.
And I was getting an error message, so unfortunately I can't, but what I can do is email it to the committee as soon as we're done.
Yeah, that might be helpful. But I'll give you the 10-cent version. And the 10-cent version is basically it took all the areas of not just what we commonly refer to as the downtown district, but it included all developmental parcels that were available for development, think of like block sites, commons down there, Commons Park down here. And at the time this thing was developed, all that's going on there now or is in place did not exist, including the new building downtown here. So, and it really got into specifics on how what was ideal for the city according to planning and EDA and council at the time. For all these areas, what would be the kind of highest and best use. Really drilling down beyond the comp plan. And at this point in time, again, we have a fair amount of that has been executed. And it has introduced new issues that maybe weren't contemplated during that redevelopment master plan. And some of the developments that occurred are not necessarily what was the vision. So I'm of the opinion that it's a good document. I don't think an update would take an awfully long time, nor would it cost a lot of money. Because I don't think we're starting from scratch. And it was, here's what happened. So, kind of probably a lengthy appendix, not a one-page appendix to that plan to say, here's the 2021 or 22 update or something. My concern is that if you're familiar again with the comp plan, you look at the comp plan. To me, just doesn't offer much in terms of saying, well, we think that there should be, these types of businesses in these locations. It's super broad. as broad in terms of population numbers, or maybe a little tighter in terms of citywide population numbers and stuff like that. But it doesn't get into any specificity. So I think it's a good document to, to do reference for, primarily for planning, I guess, but also for us to refer to if we have folks that come in doing X, Y, or Z. So I'll open it to any general comments in terms of if you guys haven't been through it recently or at all, it might be a little bit hard to comment on.
I can't believe 8 years has gone by already since we. I know. When they first reviewed it. Here's the problem I have with it. We only can control certain parts of the development in the downtown because we don't own the property. And so we can do we can dream all we want and spend all the money we want on a master plan, but unless we have some control over what's going to happen, when we found that out with the sale of the catering place and turned into the assisted living or the daycare center, it's going to be real difficult for us. We have this grandiose plan and we want to do something with it. It would be great if it could turn out the way it's been written, but I think what happened down Acres Block is beautiful, and it's a good use of the property. I think what happened over here in Commerce Park is great, but unless we have control over what happens with the property, anything's possible. And since we don't own it, and I just don't want us to spend a lot of effort and money on something that we're updating, but it can't really be implemented unless we have some kind of control that it can be implemented. That would be my only comment on it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, and I don't want to misrepresent it as this is the absolute ironclad vision of what all of these places and things need to be. One thing I think that it served well for was when we did have a fair amount of blank space in town. And we had developers that came in and wanted to do whatever it is they wanted to do. And they say, what is your vision? What else is the city looking at? It was a pretty good document for that. And it did get used for that. I do know it did, because I was involved in a number of meetings, particularly as it relates to the old Anchor Block site and to the downtown building here. So if you have folks that are coming in that we're trying to attract business to the city, and they say, well, what's your plan? And you throw the comp plan at them, it's kind of, And so I think it filled more of that role,
sure,
as opposed to, as opposed to. Just our vision. I guess the other thing too, I would say, is that the other thing that I know where it did come into play is when we did I think it was, I'm not sure the official title, but I call it the streets plan or the downtown revitalization. What are the street improvement plans? Yeah, so
that part of it was really well done.
Yeah, and it was.
If that gets followed, that'll look great.
Right, and it was heavily referenced as part of that, because a lot of that was extracted right out of this redevelopment master plan. So,
but I mean, the vision had these grandiose buildings going down Main Street, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that building has to be sold, that one, and that one, to all at the same time to one person with a vision to be able to do that, and it's hard to put that together.
Agreed, I agree, and again,
it did change quite a bit when the first one that Wally put together. Remember, Anchor Block was a corporate.
Oh yeah, the 2010 council, some of the original development vision for down there. Literally, I mean, I used to call it the Bellagio. That's what it looked like. It was ridiculous. It's like, well, that's never going to happen. Yeah.
And again, it's just more of a, it's a roadmap or whatever. It's something that, yeah, we'd love to see this, but in reality, it may never happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that plan was looked at, was, yeah, it'd be great to have a Medtronic or Reflex Medical, huge corporate office over on that site, but reality was it never, just never happened.
If we were to update the plan, I think it would be good to put those features back into the plan. So they're in there now, because somebody's going to look at the plan as it is today and say, well, this is the plan. How come it's not turning out quite like this? Other than the roads. So for that aspect, if we're going to show the plan to somebody, then I think we should update it to where we're at.
I don't think, but I would argue, I mean, when we talk, when I look at which I have it on my, I have the luxury of having it on my screen right now as well, but when I look at some of what was, put into this plan back in 2012 when it was finalized, I mean, we're not that far off, to be honest. We're really, I mean, some of the things are, if I look at the number of housing units, I mean, we're probably darn near right on the mark.
Yeah.
Are they exactly where we thought they would be? Not necessarily, but they're pretty close. All the M&I stuff down there, I'm just looking at the plan right now. They called for, let's see, 164 townhome type units and 100 apartments. Okay. And they also called for an additional 250 and senior house down there. Okay, so what do we wind up with? We wind up with 120 apartments, 130 townhomes, storage facility, and equipment.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's not off. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
And that's where I think if we, we kind of, if we could update some of this, and again, I don't think it's a monumental effort. I talked with Morgan Dolly last week, who USB city engineer, which would, because they did participate in this, they'd probably be the right firm. And I'm not proposing they get hired to do this or anything, but they'd probably be the right firm to come in and help us tweak it. The firm that originally did it, and one of the reasons we did it is because we applied for a grant that somebody else paid for. It was a pretty high bar firm that came in and did all that work for us. So, but just kind of again, talking about if you're going to have, these are the type of uses that make sense, and if they come in and these are the spots they can go or should go, to make some sense within the city.
I have a question. When this plan was initially offered, was the attempt to have it reviewed on an annual basis so the changes wouldn't maybe be quite so monumental? You have a closer handle as to when it's transpiring more often than waiting 8, 9, 10 years to review it?
I think, so, I mean, specifically in here, it says, I'll just get to it here, so I don't have to paraphrase too much. Okay, well, there we go. Yeah, specifically says in here that this thing is a living document, and that as things change, it should be updated to reflect what actually happens and take a look at what had been proposed or what the vision was to make sure alignment is maintained, amongst the agencies within the city, the EDA, the planning council, etc. Now, unlike the comp plan, where legislative authority requires us to get it done and submit it, and what have you, nobody's doing that with this document. So,
yes, that said, I think it would be the time to update it with what is going on now, with all the projects that have gone on. We need to put that in there. This has happened. This has happened. And what do we have now? What's out there? What's left? And what do we want to see on those pieces?
Here's one the blurb I found here. So it says, redevelopment master plan for North St. Paul outlines a strategy for positive incremental change throughout the area. The plan outlines a series of achievable goals over the next 10 years within the immediate and short-term, phase planning sections laid out here. So we're not. I mean, I'm not going to argue that we've been tracking this
Yeah, we're still within range, so to speak.
Yeah, it's not a dead document, I guess is my point. So,
well, the first step would be is to get a quote.
yeah, and I think, so I did ask, or I think you'd already been asked, but I confirmed, Morgan Dolly is going to be at the meeting, the joint meeting on Thursday. So he's going to be able to speak to the master plan a little bit. He participated in that. He wasn't a primary author, but they were one of the groups that to work on it. He's going to talk to us about probably more eloquent than I have about the importance of it and why we should or shouldn't do anything. So, so I think it would make sense. I mean, I don't think we're going to get to a consensus because a lot, we haven't taken a look at it in a while. But if those, particularly those that are going to attend on Thursday, if you get a chance to breeze through it, I think it would be helpful to you can really get a sense of what they were trying to do with it, and and then formulate an opinion as to whether we should invest any time, money, or effort in doing an update. So, any more thoughts or conversation around that? Okay, so yeah, and I don't want to be overbearing about it. I mean, I'm advocating for it, certainly as an individual, but the EDA doesn't should let me know. But I enjoy hearing your thoughts on it.
So you had a conversation with Elaine.
I did talk to Elaine.
And now there's, I mean, I would assume that they would also want an updated, because as part of their process, did they look at it at all? Or?
Well, I don't want to speak for Elaine, but the sense that I get is this, is they deal with things that are brought to them and they assess them and weigh them against the zoning code. And what's in the comp plan. I did not get the sense that they're looking at this a great deal, if at all. Part of what I wanted to remind her was that, and she was the chairman of the planning commission at the time. They were commission this stuff and participated in getting it done. And so to me, it's a little weird that we got a bunch of free money. We had this great study done, a bunch of great stuff, and now nobody's using it. That just seems weird. So she, I think that, where it falls in planning commission in terms of guiding document, especially when weighed against the comp plan and zoning code, I'm not sure how much they'll use that. That will probably be part of the discussion. And frankly, if everyone says we're not going to use it, we're not going to look at it because it's too much brain damage, or I can't because we're the planning commission and I have to use these documents, then fine. But that's not what the document says. And all of our names are on it. So when I say that, I mean planning, EDA, and city council.
Yeah. I'm all for updating it and making the changes. Otherwise, if you don't have a plan, where are you going to go? We got a lot of stuff new. There's a lot of stuff going on. I know that they've come to an agreement, and I don't know who it's with for the newspaper. They have another buyer. Yeah.
But well, let's use that as an example then. So they have a new buyer. Power does the EDA have?
The EDA doesn't have any power.
Okay. How about the council? Can they say yes or no to a project there?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
If it fits in zoning and everything, we can't prevent it from happening.
Right.
I mean, we ran into that situation in Vadnais Heights. We went in and we were going to build a Wendy's restaurant on County Road E and 35W or 35E.
Yeah.
And they had a development agreement with Walmart that says you can have so many square feet of restaurant space. They signed a development agreement. We go to planning commission, we got beat 5-0. So we ended up having to hire an attorney. We went in an attorney and said, listen, you guys, you have no valid reason to stop us from going there. And we ended up winning in council 3-2. They wanted to put a 1-acre coffee shop that I don't know how they were ever gonna, because this is our main street. Well, you're right next to the freeway. Who's walking up and down the street? I don't know, but we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, to your point, I mean, you can't just go and do anything in there, but
Exactly.
you know, and just about, you know, the whole stretch down 7th used to be called the diversified district. And the zoning code, the new term they're using escapes me, but, and everything within the diversified district actually required everything. There was no approved use. Everything was conditional. Now there's a lot of conditional uses. You know, here's the litany of things that you can do. Yeah. If approved. Yeah, that's right. Here's the things you can't do, right? You know, we can all guess.
Yeah.
The things you can't do.
I do know that all new business licenses have to be approved by the planning commission, but if it's in the ordinance that our city accepts these types of businesses, they can't deny and say where they're going to be located.
Right, but the zoning code does it. The zoning, if a business comes in and that parcel is in an area that is, and the proposed use is listed as a conditional use, it still has to be presented and approved. Now, disapproving it if it is well within the bounds of what's listed as a conditional use can get murky, right? But it happens all the time.
Does anybody know what the plan is for the paper?
And I don't know that
I try to stay, because of being on EDA, I try to stay away from that. That's my father-in-law.
Oh, okay.
So
Owns the building or is going to buy the building?
he owns the building as right now.
and I think that, you know, again, a lot of this, you know, whether it's development master plan, zone code, pick your document, you know, a lot of it is just to, you know, okay, hey, you want to come in and it's good for the business owner too, or the person coming in, right? Well, hey, you're coming in and you want to do this, but you know, be aware the vision and already, maybe it already has traction, or maybe it's even underway. But here's what's going across the street with you, which may or may not be compatible with what you're trying to do. Right? So I think all of it just still, you know, becomes a you know, part of the big picture.
I think if, you know, we have people that are looking, I mean, for a while there, we were talking about an architectural firm and stuff like that. If we're looking, if we have people that are coming to us, businesses that are coming to us, you know, there are spots that we maybe could facilitate them going to talk to, like my father-in-law or whoever owns the loft, or, you know, the different spots, and say, you know, this probably would meet our criteria for what our master plan is looking like. And we believe that you'd be successful in, or could be successful in these places.
I think part of the dream too is that if we can get the EDA to a point that, you know, was envisioned out of the gate, if we have really active, you know, staff or even members of EDA that are out promoting, trying to execute a plan, you know, then we can say, well, we've got a building for sale. Let's just pretend it it's not in contract. We have a building for sale. This is our vision for this area. We can go out specifically and look for those types, right? To try to execute the plan. I mean, I think at some point on the continuum, the EDA is still fairly young, you know, 10 years old, we'll call it. You know, at some point on the continuum, we could get, you know, and there are EDAs around the metro that do that kind of work. And so, and make those types of things happen. So why don't we leave it at this? I'll just ask if you can before Thursday's meeting. It's Thursday at 6:30, the joint meeting. If you can carve out 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can carve out, breeze through that thing. It's online. It's on the website, pretty easy to find.
I'll email it.
Oh,
Make
okay.
it easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, just send me back a comment that, you know, in general, yeah, this looks like something that may have some value. And we're not approving anything. We're not approving any costs or anything like that at this point. It's just, are we going to, put a joint group together to investigate this and see what we want to do? Or are we going to do nothing eventually? So an opinion, where you sit on that would be helpful. Right? So the second agenda item for the joint meeting, which to me is almost directly related to the first item, is with all the changes and the things that have occurred in the last decade, if you will, and we talked about it a little bit in our last meeting. What are we doing about our downtown parking needs, and where are we when weighed against either comp plan, redevelopment master plan, our own personal opinions, our own businesses? Where are we and how much do we need to elevate this issue amongst EDA, planning, and city council to get something done from the parking standpoint? And again, back to, you can pick a document, but I would suggest the redevelopment master plan, talks about bring in downtown housing and restaurants or other businesses that have pedestrian traffic. Bike traffic is a huge deal for a lot of people, including the planning commission. How are we circulating these people in and amongst the city? Where are they going to park? When they park, how are they getting to all of these places? And can they do it in a safe manner, etc.? So I think parking is becoming a pretty significant issue in town. And
I think it's always been an issue.
It has. Yeah, it has. And I think, we talked about it. I won't regurgitate all of it, but, the last meeting with that restaurant going into this building here, they're going to wind up largely parking in that back lot behind KJ's. I think you told me your wife tripped out there.
Well, that was me.
Well, that was you. Even better.
And if I would have had a couple, but I was drinking Coca-Cola all night. But it was dark.
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
It's in a poor state of repair, and with all of the residents and the people that are visiting them, visiting the restaurant, and the other things we're doing downtown. Where are we at on, how do we get there on parking? So council, EDA, and planning are all three different directions.
If you do put a restaurant in there, they're going to have to have that line. Where else are they going to park?
But it's not presently a precondition or part of the development. That's the thing. So
Who owns the lot?
Okay.
Well, then anybody could use it.
technically can, but it's garbage.
Oh, you would need to fix that.
Oh, it's a terrible. So, yeah, the lighting's terrible. The pavement's terrible.
So that's why it fell down.
Yeah, okay, the major overhaul. It was a good sized crack that had been overlooked, and
this may be a question for Morgan too, because he's putting together a capital improvement plan right now. I don't know if that's part of that.
I did talk to Morgan about that. So they've done a little bit of, when I say a little, I mean a very little bit of work about that. I think if you guys remember, Scott Dudek at one point threw a number out about what the cost of renovating that parking lot back there was. I asked Morgan about that. He said that it's not an engineer's estimate. As you know, that was a complete swag. Hey, look at this. What do you think it's going to cost? So that's about all the work that's been done there. But there is, we pair with that from EDA, from an EDA specific viewpoint, we pair with that the building that we purchased for closure. If that does not get redeemed, and I assume that it's not yet been redeemed, okay, so that the redemption period runs out on August 22nd. The original premise under which we you know, what the public use that we said we should get that piece of property for was to create some sort of connection between that 288 car lot, or it's not a lot, you know, it's around 300 cars back there, the 300 person parking lot back there, and 7.
Oh, see, we did lose the parking lot with the new building. There was a little parking lot, probably a 30-car parking lot, and the street parking. Yep. So you're up to 50. Well, that's 50 cars. Right. You know, maybe we might have to look at maybe a little expansion of that parking lot. So
right. I think we certainly need to figure out how to get people to use it, because it doesn't get as much use as it should because of its current state, its lack of lighting. Its, you know,
so how far are we willing to make people walk?
well, that's the other thing.
I mean,
yeah.
So you go to Uptown and you want to go to Bar Abilene or the Uptown Theater or whatever. There's really only one place to park, and it's that parking lot. Sure. So you're looking at 2 to 3 block walk wherever you're going, to Stella's or wherever. I mean, is that what we're looking at? Are we willing to say, okay,
it's all right as long as it's not December?
Yes.
In wintertime, it's going to change. Yeah.
I think that and to be clear, the intended discussion with planning is really did not talk about, hey, we specifically want to do X, Y, or Z. It's, you know, what is the issues? What should we be thinking about? And then we as an EDA will have to decide what do we, you know, want to undertake, if anything, or what do we just want to press the council and others to make happen. You know, we'll have to decide that. And I mean, that could be anything. And I personally wouldn't take anything out. Who's to say structured parking somewhere in town wouldn't make sense?
Well, it's hard to bring business in if you can't park. Plain and simple. Anybody would realize that, you know.
But it is becoming, it is an issue. I think it's been an issue. It's always been an issue. You know, so I think from again, if we get back to our charge, which is, you know, to promote the economic well-being of the city, the ability to get people in here and patronize the businesses is a big deal. And parking is a huge part.
Has to be done. Right. It's got to be done.
Right.
No, the new building has underground parking, correct?
For residents.
Yeah. So, and that doesn't mean the residents that are, you know, on the first floor, they might tend to want to use the street, and that there should be some outlines with that.
Or that they don't have 2 cars.
Or 1 car
Inside.
Yep.
And they also have to pay
100 spots.
to park an additional
So
fee.
I'm concerned, you know, if they only got 1 car inside, they have 2 cars. Now they got to park 1 outside. You got how many residents are going to be in there? You know,
The lot's full already.
Mm-hmm.
how many units are in it total?
89.
89 or 100 with
100 parking spots. I think what we heard.
So I think a chance that you're going to need 30, 40 spots outside if you have 2 people living in the same house.
And right away you got your restaurant there.
Right.
And where are his cars going to park? They're going to park 2 blocks away.
Right.
And it's
The business.
it's all going to hurt.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, and we're not trying to solve the parking problems.
No, but I mean,
that apartment, but for the city as a whole.
Yeah.
We're trying to entice, you know, businesses to come in here. We're trying to get this restaurant in here. We want it to take, you know, we've agreed, we're waiting for council approval. We'll talk about that briefly, but, you know, we're throwing a big chunk of money to get this restaurant in here. We want it to be viable. And if all of those residents that are parking from that building, you know, they're parked all along 7th and in the first 30 stalls over in the parking lot, nobody can get to the restaurant. Well,
They're going to drive by and go somewhere else.
Also, like a week figured there were 300 spots there, like you mentioned, Robert. And to Kevin's and to Tom's point, we've lost 1/3 of that between potential people having 2 cars parking on the street or out of the apartment. The other end of the apartment that is taking parking away from the backside, about a third of those 300 are gone. Intense as far as businesses are concerned and being able to bring people into town and make it comfortable and
Well, we also
make it easy for
we
them.
did gain in front. It's all parallel parking now. And then, along with the apron was.
We should,
Gonna be all parked.
we should consider then, and I know, I don't think DDA can do this, but we should consider putting up some signage that says non-residential parking only, business parking only for that's on the main street. Because Newman's is they're gonna park at Newman's, walk across the street to go in the apartment building. Well, that's not fair to them. They've been here for a while and got an established business. So, maybe we should consider taking a look, at least exploring the opportunity of putting up some signage that says no residential parking. So forcing them into the other lot.
Is that in the downtown streets plan?
I also believe we're gonna, if we're gonna have if the restaurants going in there and we want people to park behind across the street, that we should probably have some signage that directs people where public parking is.
Yeah. Right. But then that area there could say residential parking and business parking.
I know we have signage out there right now, it's public parking. Pointed that way.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, we do. Scott Thorson has gone around with some pictures. I mean, the signs are there, but is it good wayfinding? I'd say no.
To say signs you can't cross the park on the other side of the street at an angle.
Anybody ever seen those signs?
I've seen them.
I've seen the signs and I've seen everybody else ignore them.
I know you know.
I have ignored them too.
But I do look both ways.
You pull out the back end?
So I'm of the opinion that this is, when we started, early in the EDA, we had a lot of chicken and egg conversation. Do we need residents? Do we need restaurants? What's going to bring people? And then, what do you do? Well, you don't start by building parking lots, right? Okay, well now we've got residents. We've lots of them coming. We've got, a restaurant coming, businesses. And so we're kind of at the, the next stage, which is fix the streets, give a place to park.
Well, the parking lots we have were in the plan 40 years ago.
Yeah.
They were probably built 4 years ago.
Yeah, they're old.
Yeah, but I'm just saying for the size of the city and the amount of traffic, they would do it 4 years ago. Now look at the traffic. Look at,
I think if we as an EDA identify the problem, and bring it to the council, bring it to the capital improvement plans, because we have streets that are falling apart right now. I think it's all over. There's no stop to it. But if we identify it and maybe somehow figure it out, within the capital improvement plan and read it, this is a priority. As a council, this is a priority for us because of the new restaurant, the new apartment building, what's happening downtown. If it's put on, up the list of when we can do it. It's all about the money. And this project is going to be bigger than just an overlay.
oh yeah,
We're talking electrical, we're talking cost-free charging station.
Yeah, you're going to have to put charging station, or at least run the pipe for it.
At least stub it in if you don't put the whole.
I think we're going in.
Well, so we had a board meeting through NMPA, our power agency here since last meeting, and we were able to put that off for a year due to the situation of our electrical. We have to actually set a pole out there, run temporary overhead to feed that temporarily. So we're just going to push it off until next year.
But we're not losing the grant or whatever.
Nope, it's still a done deal.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Which is probably better anyways. Now we can make sure we get it.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So, you know, again, from an agenda standpoint, with the planning commission, it is, we put it on here, and this is one thing where Elaine had kind of cautioned me a little bit in terms of what they can and can't talk about. They're going to be a little cautious in talking about specifics in terms, you know, us coming in and saying, okay, this is our vision, what we're going to do with that parking lot, and tear that building down and do this and X, Y, and Z, because they as a planning commission, even if it's a city-owned project, they can't have a perception of it, you know, the whole thing was cooked and approved in advance, right? But so the discussion will be more broad in terms of the need and where it should fit in planning discussion, and make sure that something doesn't get sold that really needs to be a parking lot and somebody throws something on there that we can't get rid of, right? To make sure that we're on the same page with planning in that regard. So that's really what I think the discussion is intended to be. And they get an enormous amount, Wayne told me that they get enormous amount of comments about you know, pedestrian traffic and bike parking and these things, and bike traffic and things like that. So I encourage that she get her group to share that with us, because I think this is going to land right back in our lap to push something. Now we may not be the executor of it, but maybe this gets pushed to staff or to council to make a priority and it gets done as a matter of course that way. But I think it is going to wind up back with us to say that thing's got to be a priority. And you know, I keep talking about that a lot. There's other lots too, right? That parking has to be a priority downtown. We've got to come up with a plan and figure it out. So that's what I think we can expect to hear from their folks. So is all of the other stuff that they hear from all their public hearings. Anytime somebody proposes something. So I don't, any other discussion around that? That was really more just informative and give people a heads up so you know what's coming.
Are they supportive of the EDA's position and the responsibilities that at least at this point have been identified within our organization? Because it seems to me that if we don't support each other, we're kind of defeating our own purpose on two sides of the street there within our own city. And I think we need to be supportive of each other once we understand, to your point, Robert, where we're at and what our responsibilities are and what we can and cannot do. Maybe that clarification will take care of that.
Yeah,
there's different roles, you know. We have a different role than what they have.
Right. I think to answer your question, I would say rather than putting the finger on that group, again, this is my own opinion, I put the finger on ourselves to say, I think they would be supportive to answer your question, but I think we have to be more vocal about the things that we are trying to do and the things we're trying to execute, whether they are, you know, EDA executed items within the city, or they are EDA involvement in private development, or whatever that is. Help keep them informed of what may or may not come in front of them, or what we are trying to do. So when something does get in front of them, what they do have the ability and the authority to do is they have the ability to say, time out, I think this is in conflict with where the EDA is going. Now, that doesn't mean they'll side with us ultimately, right? But if, you know, you know, we talked about it with this other, you know, building over here, you know, they at least have the ability to punt and say, let's check this out or do whatever. They do have to vote generally within the guidelines of, you know, the zoning statute.
Sure, I understand.
And so they get a little handcuffed. But I think they would, I'm of the opinion they would be supportive if we have things in front of them and they know what we're trying to, they know we're trying to execute something in any particular spot, to not trample us. And that might be a good question to raise on Thursday. But we've heard that something similar to that once before. So. So that's really it. I don't know that we need to talk a lot more about the parking issue. I think we're general agreement that something got to happen there, but we just, we're going to have a discussion about parking. And
is there some analysis that can be done as to a city our size and how much public parking we should have?
I think you're going to find out really quickly here when the restaurant opens up and the people start moving in.
I personally think that's a big part of redevelopment master plan. Yeah, because you're not going to get that out of the or any other.
But I do think that right now, if you have, say you have 70 overflow parking places from the residential area, you're looking at, I mean, if it's 4,200 square feet, you're probably looking at best, 140 seat restaurant. So, yeah, so you're only looking probably at another 100 cars. So you still aren't going to have enough room if you have a 300 car parking lot for other businesses.
As if it's on auction. Seriously?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Or on car show night.
Well, car show night is a whole different animal. Right. I mean, so I do, and
again, Morgan Dolly with WSB is going to be there as well. This is something he can speak to and we'll be able to speak to. I don't know again that we're going to get into, we need this many stalls and this is where they need to be, but in general, is it a problem? Should we be doing something? Should we be elevating it as an issue within the city? Is I think what we're trying to get, with planning on Thursday. Yes, sir. No, it's your turn if you have nothing for the group.
Also, I'm the CIP program in 2022 next year. They were looking at potentially downtown and including that parking lot, but I don't know how seriously that was taken. So it needed to be updated.
Parking lot.
So I don't know that just keep. So I don't know.
Nope.
Probably change the numbers.
Maybe.
Okay. So it's something we got to wait.
When is it? So the 2022 CIP is that already approved or when is that?
Workshop. Yeah, we're in workshops.
Okay, so if what I'm hearing is now if we think that is a big issue or an issue that needs to be elevated, now's a good time to do that. Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Don, anything to report?
Good job.
Do you want me to check with Kyle and see if we can get you updated financials and then
That'd be
forward
great.
them? Okay.
I would love that.
The have the auditors gone?
Mr. McNamara was here.
He did do a pretty thorough update of EDA's financials and the annual report and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really the last.
We haven't spent much.
Yeah, I know we haven't.
125 going out.
You should get those at every meeting.
Yeah.
Restaurant.
The chair report, just a couple items. So one of my to-dos, if you will, from last week was to prepare a draft memo to the council emphasizes the need for improved parking and what have you downtown. I've just opted to punt that based on the agenda item planning. I want to have this discussion. We'll have that discussion, and then I think I will draft something and then circulate it. And, we'll get something the council can try to get some emphasis put on the need to get another $1.5 million in the CFC for that parking. Something else. So that was the one item. The other item is that I had here. So regarding the we did approve staff to work with city attorney and others to prepare the $125,000 grant with some conditions to the restaurant that was coming in.
What's the name of the restaurant?
The parent is like B52s, but I don't think they're going to call it.
No. Well, there's another one going in over here by the
Subway.
Brothers, whatever that's called, something, but I thought, but
it's a copycat of that club restaurant.
Leopard.
Yeah.
I don't know when.
They've got the bid on doing the plumbing in it, so really, yeah.
So they've been in and out of there for a long time, but they don't seem real aggressive.
Yeah.
What I heard was kind of interesting. They talking alcohol building.
Whoops.
Oh, they thought they had it in their shop.
Oh boy.
No. I got work out about that.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Okay.
That's a big mistake.
Yeah.
The good news.
Yeah.
Are they a good realtor?
Blame their attorney.
That's what I heard. But I can't
What do you
confirm.
want to think?
They didn't buy the building, they just moved out of the space.
Makes sense.
The building owner story is the same, to my knowledge. Yeah. But yes, there was conflict as to what they felt.
How many square feet they rented?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes things just have to unfold. So regarding that, the 125,000, in getting that prepared with the city attorney advised that the city should have a business subsidy policy letter prior to doing that. That is, I hope, is being fast tracked, and so we're going to plagiarize, some of what's out there, so we're compliant with the statute before that arrangement is done. But the samples that I've seen is really in line with kind of what we talked about. It ties some, it ties the folks getting the money to, probably some number of jobs, wage stuff, got to be there so long, type of stuff. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, and I don't think the timing is hurting anything.
And it's because it's under 150,000, we don't have to go through public hearing, which is nice. 150 or more, 55. You're spending tax dollars. So I believe there's going to be a public hearing for the business subsidy policy. We have to have a public hearing for that.
So that's all I had to report.
Just like business subsidy policy, we did have a meeting today with the bar owners for bar owners in the car show. Car show right now is, I don't know how many people. My guess is it's like the state fair. It goes from one end to the other end. We're seeing a lot more and more of people walking the avenue with beers in their hand, drinks in their hand, coming out of the establishments, purchasing and then coming out and then walking the avenue. It's a liability for the city, it's a liability for the car show, it's a liability for our owners. So what we was kind of interesting, what they thought was Friday nights, no, we're not going to have anything outside. We'll just keep everything inside. Well, we open up the patios out there.
Right, exactly.
People are enjoying it. Have a drink, go outside. So what we determined was to have a walk-off area outside of your establishment with signage. This is your patio area. You're going to stay within those grounds. We're also going to make signs for away from the bars that there's no alcohol allowed.
Yeah, because there's people bringing alcohol.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can't blame it on the
trunks are full.
No, because the car owners,
Right.
their car shows what they do.
That's what they do.
Open the trunk, open the cooler.
And to me, Kevin, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's,
Yes.
but it's becoming more and more of a norm. Where people are taking advantage of it now. Now it's not just a cooler sitting there
Right.
having a beer, looking at the cars. Now it's becoming open bottle,
Open the can.
open can, so without any type of, it's a family, it should be a family.
So drinking corrals, but no free range.
How the bars intending to police that? I mean, the roping and you could have a 20-foot fence sounds like a great idea.
So this is the
But
first
man,
step.
that's a heck of a job.
It's the first step of,
You might think that.
the first step of trying to
Yeah, I
corral
understand.
it. And with having the signage out there. That's all we can do right now.
Sounds like a main.
Understand.
No.
It's an FYI for us.
This is FYI. So I think, the car show is becoming bigger and bigger. The last 2 Fridays have been unbelievable.
Well, there's a pent up demand too. So
Right.
it's just,
People know about, not a bad thing. I'm a little remiss, I'm sorry to introduce our council rep, Tim Cole.
welcome.
Thank you. Our new council representative of the EPA. I heard about her 2 days ago, but I forgot to announce it. So did I. Hey, this is you volunteers.
So we're already on the same page.
No, I welcome Tim because he brings, he does business background and he, I think, will be a good asset for the EPA.
Anything from any other EPA Lisa, there's a couple other items under report from staff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was August 28th. I know you had inquired about that. And then you had also asked for job descriptions for people that were previously in the role of supporting EDA. And that was a community development director as well as a strategic operations director. So both of those job descriptions are included in the packet.
So I think regarding those job descriptions, we talked at our last meeting about the need to get a full-time or near full-time person executing, EDA functions on the city staff. And so maybe we can, if you can take a look at those, prior to next meeting, and I'd like to have a discussion next meeting about what we think that individual might look like from a skill set, salary, etc. And we might as well think about timeshare with that individual on other staff duties. What is acceptable and how we would manage it. And I say that because in the past, we did hire people and I said, we don't need it.
And I think this is discussion in regards to the new city manager. And
Right.
We can't do anything.
Right. And where is that process?
Just gonna start this. It's gonna start in the next couple of weeks. Then get to the council, how the direction of what the council wants to do in regards to the process of how to do an outside agency or do a inside stage, go through the leader in some cities, but the pool is a lot smaller, we don't know. There's a lot of options there.
So the chair's desire that the EDA we get all of our demands in order, and that is on top of it. What the EDA wants.
First come, first serve.
So the new finance guy started yesterday.
Okay.
Dan, I think his last and
Still showed up.
Winnick,
second day today. What was that, Kerry?
Dan Winnick.
Thank you. So we welcome him to our team now, and it's tough to jump into without everything's interim right now.
Yeah.
You know, you got interim city manager, you got interim police chief, and you know, in that process, we're going to police chief here in the next month or so. So it's in the pipeline, so we'll have to move probably next. Really good.
Okay, if there's no other business, hearing none, we will go ahead and adjourn. Okay. And hope to see as many folks as we can on Thursday night at 6:30, and that's in the council chambers.
The training room is where
training.
it's set up. Yep, the fire department training room.
Okay. So it's over in the other building?
No, right down at the end of the hall.
Downstairs.
It's in the
No.
snowman in the basement. No.
No part. Okay.
Second floor on the east end.
Just keep walking. You'll find it.
And yeah, if you can't join in person, if you could join via Zoom, that'd be great. So hopefully we'll be productive there. We'll work it out.
And will the Zoom be just voice only?
I guess voice. I don't know how you do.
Well, no, they'll be, well, actually, if there's whoever's on the Zoom meeting, you'll be able to see them. With the exception of my computer doesn't work, so you won't see me. But anyone in the room, then it would just be audio.
Okay.
And we'll try to set up a camera so that we're showing the whole group as they're just speaking.
Will there be a television or something there? Because I think the problem we all go on Zoom will be at the echo.
Yes, the people in the room shouldn't be on Zoom, except
There'll be a monitor up there so we can.
yeah, probably not. Because my computer is not.
I gotta figure out how to communication.
Yeah, when I get done with our audit, Terry, I'll add that to my list, all right?
Oh, go get the slideshow on the overhead projector.
Yeah.
Let's get a whiteboard.
Now that's advanced from the chalkboard at least, right?
Okay, thanks. All right.
Thank you.
You hearing from Eric then, or will I hear from you?
Me. So I'll try to coordinate a meeting with him this week and then we can discuss that.
Our Thursday would be the best day, but we can make other arrangements.
Well, let's
too
see if we
it's
can do
not.
it tomorrow.
Okay. Right.
I'll talk to Eric right now when I get done.
Okay, that's all.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Did you go to the baseball game?